Turning to anti-Semitism on American campuses since the Hamas terror assault on the 7th of October. It will come as no surprise to many that a Harvard task force has found that Israeli students at the prestigious university are facing what's being called a dire situation. A preliminary report finding that there are frequent cases of social exclusion and that Jewish students face what is termed political litmus tests to participate in clubs and activities. Now, the task force was convened by the school's Jewish interim president, Alan Garber, in January, shortly after the previous president, Claudine Gay, resigned over that criticism of her handling of anti-Israel protests on campus, and of course that congressional hearing in which she was asked if calls for the genocide of Jews violated university conduct. She responded, "It can be, depending on the context." Well, Harvard is the second elite college after Stanford to receive official guidance that it should address campus anti-Semitism on its premises. And so, for more reaction and insight, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio Dr. Charles Asher Small, the Executive Director at the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. Thank you so much for being here in studio.
Yes, honored to be here.
So from the vantage point of people in this part of the world, it was with much horror that many watched the anti-Israel protest action on student campuses following the 7th of October, not to mention, of course, Claudine Gay at that diabolical congressional hearing. Your thoughts on what came out of this report? What stood out for you?
Well, I think it's a very weak report. First of all, the co-chair of the task force is a scholar that actually contends that Israel is an apartheid state. So if Israel is an apartheid state, from a liberal human rights perspective, I don't think Israel would have a right to exist, in a sense. So the fact that he's chairing the task force, I think, is problematic, and he's teaching courses as part of a response to anti-Semitism at Harvard on issues of anti-Semitism. So there's a profound contradiction. The interim report does not define anti-Semitism, which is interesting, and it really doesn't address the anti-Semitism in curriculum, which I think is really problematic. And it doesn't deal with the sources of anti-Semitism, like SJP, Students for Justice on Palestine, that were making lives very difficult for Jewish and Israeli students at Harvard and around the country. Another issue that's not being addressed in this report is the fact that Harvard has money from Qatar, and Qatar is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood and has been funding universities at the tunes of tens and tens of billions, with a B, of dollars in the United States and around the world. So here is a regime that has a bayah, a spiritual oath to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood believes that Israel doesn't have a right to exist and that Jewish people need to be murdered. Yosef Qaradawi, the spiritual head of the Muslim Brotherhood, always argued that the true believer, the true Muslim, according to this very narrow vision of Islam, is obligated to finish the work of Hitler. So this is where the money is coming from, and it's coming for the past 40 years from the Muslim Brotherhood-backed sources, and this is facilitating anti-Semitism in the classroom and on campus, and it needs to be addressed. And one more thing I would say is that according to American law, the Harvard and other universities have to report money to the federal government, and they also have to be transparent with any agreement that they have from foreign sources. They have to divulge the contract and any agreements, and the task force doesn't even address these issues.
So why is it so lacking, so to speak? Why you have this dangerous situation where Jewish students don't feel safe on campus, and yet you do a report, you conduct an investigation, and you don't do it properly, and these are your outcomes? Yeah,
so I think in a sense that the culture of these elite universities in the United States are institutionally deeply anti-Semitic, and they don't ask for outside help. They don't turn to experts on issues of anti-Semitism. It's all in-house, and it's people that sort of are adhering to the general zeitgeist that Israel is problematic, and we know that as Israel is being demonized, Jewish faculty and students on campus are also being demonized, and this is not being addressed in this sort of political, philosophical environment at elite universities in the United States and also in Western Europe.
Well, one of the many disturbing aspects also out of this report that stood out for me was about the teachers and the faculty. It said the report condemned what it described as disturbing reports of Harvard faculty and teaching fellows harassing or discriminating against students because they are Israeli or they have pro-Israel views.
Right.
This is 2024. How is this happening on these campuses, and what kind of action can realistically be taken?
You know, I'll just say very briefly that I was at a conference at Columbia University, and also similar events took place at NYU, where professors of gender studies and post-colonial studies and doctoral students at some of the top universities in the country were arguing that October the 7th was a form of resistance, and they justified the violence that was perpetuated against Jewish people in southern Israel, and even the sexual assaults. And they were arguing that this was a form of resistance, and that the fault of the violence was the fact that Jewish people are on the land. So these are top professors arguing that Israel needs to be dismantled, and anybody that supports the apartheid, genocidal, racist entity, as these professors were articulating, become a problem as well. So the hostility on campus comes from the classroom. It's in the encampments with SJP that is also connected to radical left-wing organizations and the Muslim Brotherhood. SJP said that they were not just supporting the Palestinians or Hamas, but they were Hamas. So this is being tolerated. You know, and Hamas is a designated terrorist organization in the United States, and Harvard and Columbia has done nothing about this yet. So we hope that the institution will shift, but right now it's the people that are perpetuating anti-Semitism that are carrying out these reports.
Who is best placed to unpack these historical distortions for students?
Look, I think that, you know, the work that my colleagues and I do at ISGAP, the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, we have 80 research fellows from around the world who are experts on anti-Semitism from different perspectives. We have over 600 people that we've worked with at Oxford, where we train professors to deal with contemporary anti-Semitism. So this network of experts and scholars from around the world, from 40 countries, should be informing these task forces, and I think they are equipped to deal with contemporary anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, there's a terrible blind spot in elite universities in the United States that are actually perpetuating and justifying and normalizing anti-Semitism.
Horrifying indeed. Historical distortions, current distortions, many questions remain. And of course, we're hearing a more detailed report, including a more intensive study of Jewish life on campus, is expected in the fall. We wait for that result as well, and then we'll bring you back for your insights. Dr. Charles Asher Small, thank you so much for being here in studio. Appreciate your time.